We just heard a little while ago from the president. Our White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, was among the reporters asking him questions about the Mueller testimony as he was leaving the White House for a fundraiser. Caitlin, the president, he clearly was fired up.
Yes, he was, Wolf. And White House officials said before the president even came out to speak to reporters that he was in a good mood. And he made that pretty clear as he was speaking to us about how he saw things that unfolded on Capitol Hill today.
Look, I think Robert Mueller did a horrible job, both today and with respect to the investigation. But in all fairness to Robert Mueller, he had nothing to work with. You know, you can be a builder, but if they don't give you the right materials, you're not going to build a very good building. Robert Mueller had no material. He had nothing to work with. So obviously he did very poorly today.
Now, Wolf, that is not the attitude the president had when he got up this morning, when my sources said he was calling people, talking to them, agitated about the fact that Robert Mueller was about to be on Capitol Hill. But now, after that performance, the president feels that the optics were in his favor today because he didn't think that the former special counsel had the performance he was fearing he was going to have, talking about the unflattering aspects of this report. So even though the facts of this report are no different, with the president now saying that even though before he's relied on this report to say he was exonerated, now saying that Robert Mueller doesn't have the right to exonerate anyone, the president is viewing this as a win, and he sees it as successful because he feels like Republicans were able to successfully turn the tables on the special counsel, on the FBI and the DOJ overall, and that's not what he was expecting when he went into today.
Caitlin Collins at the White House. I want you to stand by as well. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Pamela Brown, our chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto. They've been covering the Russia investigation from the beginning. We're also joined by our senior legal analyst, Preet Bharara, the former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. So the president is declaring, Preet, a complete victory today. Is that what you heard from the Mueller testimony?
It's not shocking that the president has a conclusion that doesn't match what the testimony is, just like he had a conclusion that didn't match what the report said as an underlying matter. Bob Mueller, and I've heard people on social media and elsewhere making snarky comments about whether or not he was quick enough or sharp enough or forceful enough. The fact remains that the report was not undermined a whit today. The report that said that Donald Trump engaged in all this conduct, which to my mind, but for the Office of Legal Counsel opinion, would mean that the president could be indicted, that all stood up. You had dozens of Republican members of the House ask question after question after question with a lot of gusto to try to get Bob Mueller to back off on them, and he didn't. In fact, many of the questions went to issues that are collateral and peripheral, but very few people engaged with the conclusions in the report, the facts in the report, and all sorts of other things in the report that talked about the ways in which Donald Trump probably broke the law. And that remains. And so if someone thinks that Bob Mueller, right out of the box, makes a statement about how he did not exonerate the president, which undermines the falsehood that the president has been saying for a long time, and all the other conclusions in the report remain unscathed, I don't know how you call that total victory.
And he specifically also, Jim Sciutto, he made it clear that he believes the president potentially could be charged, indicted after he leaves office.
He did. So much attention today on how Bob Mueller said the things he said, less attention on what he said. But let's just tick through a few of them to echo Preet's point here, but specific to Russian interference. He made clear that the president welcomed Russian interference and lied about it. He made clear that his encouraging of WikiLeaks was problematic. In fact, he said problematic was an understatement. He said that Russia interfered to help Trump because it believed it would benefit from Trump's victory. That's something that the current attorney general says he's investigating, that portion of the intelligence community's conclusion. But Mueller said, in his view, that's the case. And this is also important. He said that interference is taking place as we sit here today, that we've looked at 2016, Russia continues to try to interfere in the election. What is the president of the United States doing to prevent that interference? There was no discussion of that today. In fact, the special counsel made clear that the president has raised the possibility of making that easier by making accepting foreign help the new normal. The president has said very publicly, well, listen, if someone comes to me with information, I might very well accept it. So on the issue of Russian interference, in the midst of what may have been a halting testimony at times, what he actually said, the substance of what he said, at the substance of this report, which is about Russian interference in the election, the president aided and abetted. Whether it was criminal or not, no, but he aided and abetted and is not standing in the way of it today. That's damning.
That's an important point. Pamela, the president said Mueller did a horrible job today. You heard him completely rail against Mueller in his comments over at the White House. Who was a more effective messenger, though, today, the president of the United States or the former special counsel?
Well, I think bottom line is that Robert Mueller, he didn't really want to be any sort of messenger for anyone today. He was a reluctant witness. He didn't want to do this. He made that very, very clear. And what was clear to me, and that there were certainly times that he didn't have command of the material, but also that he wasn't trying to sort of play politics or help one side or the other or play along or take the bait. He seemed to be very committed to staying within the four corners of the report and not playing politics. President Trump, on the other hand, this is all marketing for him. He's trying to frame it a certain way as a win for him. They seize on certain parts, such as when Robert Mueller said that his investigation wasn't impeded, even though it is still, a crime to endeavor to obstruct justice. He seized on certain parts and tried to frame it as a win. And I think the bottom line is that people's views, in large part, were pretty much set before, and they will continue to be, And I think you heard that from Nancy Pelosi even today, that this didn't move the needle in terms of impeachment for the Democrats.
The former special counsel repeatedly referred to the Office of Legal Counsel guidelines over at the Justice Department that a sitting president can't be charged, can't be indicted. If not for those guidelines, do you think the president would have been charged, indicted?
I do. I believe that to be so. I mean, we sat around this morning after the Judiciary Committee hearing concluded, and to a person, I think, around the table, myself included, we thought that it was very significant the way that the former special counsel, answered a question from Congressman Ted Lieu that basically said, the reason you didn't indict the president was because of the OLC opinion. Is that correct? And he said yes. Now, he walked that back later. But there are all sorts of indications that what he lays out in the report is clear evidence, maybe not in all 11 instances, but in a number of the instances where all the elements seem to be made out and laid out in great detail, that those would constitute obstruction of justice, and that Bob Mueller has gone out of his way, bending over backwards, notwithstanding the attacks he gets from the president and the president's allies, to be fair to the president in light of the OLC opinion. And although there's this weird back and forth about whether or not, but for the OLC opinion, would he prosecute the president, I think based on the evidence in the report, based on the oddity of saying we're not exonerating the president, and some of that has come under criticism, which is arguable. And then the way he answered the question with Ted Lieu, I think a couple of times, to me indicates that but for the legal counsel opinion, he would indict the president, even though he's not comfortable saying that in a straightforward way.
What's going to be the impact on campaigns now down the road when a foreign government or a foreigner says, I have dirt on your opponent?
Listen, the president said he would accept it. You've had sitting Republican lawmakers say that they would accept it under some circumstances. And if they say it and they feel they're not going to face criminal charges, as this investigation showed, then this may very well be the new normal. And those were damning words, and I think disturbing, sobering words. It should be to Americans to hear the special counsel say, I fear that is the new normal. The law is clear on this. The law says accepting things of value from a foreigner is illegal. It's hard to prove that in a court of law. This special counsel did not prove it about the president, but this may be the new normal for us.